Have you ever been stressed out? It would be surprising if you hadn't. Whether it be from work, school, or having someone cut you off on the road, stress is a feeling that people experience daily. Short-term stress or acute stress is essential for our survival. Our bodies are wired to respond to stressors such as a car swerving in front of us and prompt us to either fight or flight. This fight or flight response results in both physical and behavioral changes to increase our chance of survival. These changes are initiated by the activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, also known as the stress response system. The HPA axis is a series of events that leads to the production and release of cortisol, a hormone involved in many bodily processes. This process starts in the brain with two structures called the hypothalamus, indicated here in the green arrow, and the pituitary gland, indicated here with the blue arrow. The hypothalamus, in green, is a small brain structure located above the brainstem. It secretes corticotropin release hormone, or CRH, which binds to the pituitary gland in blue. When CRH binds to the receptors on the pituitary gland, this triggers the synthesis and release of adrenocorticotropin hormone, ACTH. ACTH travels in the bloodstream from the brain, where the hypothalamus and pituitary gland are located, all the way down to the kidneys, where the adrenal gland is situated. Once the ACTH arrives at the adrenal glands, it stimulates cortisol synthesis and secretion from the adrenal cortex. The amount of cortisol present in the body regulates the activity of the HPA axis through a negative feedback regulation loop. In other words, when there is a lot of cortisol present, it signals the HPA axis to turn off the stress response system. So far, we have discussed how stress regulation through the HPA axis is beneficial for our survival. But is stress always a good thing? It turns out stress exposure is only beneficial in small doses. Prolonged exposure to stress, or chronic stress, can truly take a toll on the body. Similar to the fight or flight response triggered by acute stress, chronic stress can also lead to physical and behavioral changes. Some physical changes include alterations in the brain's size, structure, and function, and behavioral changes can include heightened anxiety and/or depression symptoms, restlessness or sleeplessness, consumption of unhealthy comfort food, and/or increased alcohol or drug use. These effects are due to the maintenance of high levels of cortisol for long periods of time. Prolonged stress can also alter neural connections in the hippocampus, amygdala, and medial prefrontal cortex, three brain structures that are essential for our daily success. The hippocampus is an area of the brain responsible for memory and mood regulation. When exposed to chronic stress, fewer new brain cells are produced, which makes it harder to create and store new memories. The amygdala is an area of the brain responsible for perception and emotion. When exposed to stress, the connections between neurons, which act as the brain's communication network, increase, which can lead to heightened anxiety symptoms. Finally, the medial prefrontal cortex is responsible for planning and decision-making. When exposed to stress, the neurons begin to debranch and the dendrites can shrink, leading to decreased communication between neurons. Luckily, our brain is resilient and can recover from the effects of chronic stress. Meditation and mental training regimens have been shown to effectively reduce the negative effects brought on by stress exposure. While the mechanism for how and why mental training regimens are effective in stress reduction are largely unknown, researchers on the Resource Project found significant evidence that it did. When compared to a control group, mental training practices focused on understanding why we feel stressed in certain situations instead of just understanding that we do in fact feel stressed, were successful in reducing stress response symptoms. These findings strengthen the idea that our sense of control and mindset played a significant role in our response to stressful experiences. So there's hope. We know that life is stressful, but if we implement positive coping skills such as deep breathing exercises and introspective reflection, we may be able to reduce the adverse effects of stress. This video was inspired by my neurobiology class, and I would like to thank my professor, Zhang, and the rest of my class for their help in designing this project. For more information, please review the articles listed in the reference section.